We're live. And it's that simple, right? You press a button there, you press another button there, and then you're on the interweb.
Kaboom.
Welcome back, Doc. I know it was a short leave, right? And I just had to have you back on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to be back, man.
We were having such a great conversation. It was like me, you, Big Ron.
Yep.
But I was like, you know what? I want to get Doc Mason back on the show.
Yeah.
101.
Right.
A little bit more 101. I have some more digging to do into your brain.
Absolutely. 100%. I'm happy to do it.
For some of the new viewers or new people that are going to come on and catch this, because there's been an explosion in some follower growth. Introduce yourself and let them flex your credentials a little bit on people.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'm Dr. Chris Mason. I'm actually a board certified ER doc. That's how I started my career in medicine. I came to the game a little bit late. Did a few other things in the world of work, from drug rep to owning my own construction business. I was a cop for a while, protein chemist, organic chemistry professor, human anatomy, physiology, and then I went to med school.
So you did all of that before you went to med school?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So like med school is this thing. Med school is this thing that like people talk about being this awful experience and takes up like 10, 12 years of their life. You would have had to taken this on like what age? What, like 28, 30?
I started that whole process at 30.
It's never too late.
It's never too late. I'm proof of that.
Hell yeah.
I'm proof of that.
So you were a cop.
Yeah.
Leading up to being
a protein chemist.
Protein chemist. What is a protein chemist?
So protein chemists, they do different things. What we were trying to do at the time was to try and grow crystals of the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. That's the receptor that fires your muscles, also responds to nicotine. So it's a really interesting protein, very tough to grow crystals of it because it's what we call a transmembrane protein, which means the outside and the inside of the protein, or the ends of the protein, like water, chemical, or the official word is hydrophilic. The part that's in the membrane, of course, membranes are made of fatty acids. It has to like fat.
Right.
So you can't really mix oil and water in that way.
Right.
So it's tough to grow those proteins.
So what are your thoughts on nicotine? Using nicotine, just nicotine as a nootropic?
Well, so nicotine has effects all across your body. You have those nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, and then there's another form of that receptor called the muscarinic acetylcholine receptors. The nicotinic acetylcholine receptors are more related to the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. So everything is up with nicotine.
So nicotine would like get you ready to go.
Right.
Right. So it's like...
That's part of the addiction.
Okay. So you're just live. You're just like a live wire anytime, ready to zap somebody.
And it's interesting you bring that up, Dan, because where we would get the starter proteins of these receptors are from electric eels.
That's wild.
Yep. We had a bunch of electric eels in the freezer, and that's how we started.
Interesting.
There's a whole nother podcast there, I think.
Okay. Hell yeah. Because I've been seeing a lot of people talk about using nicotine, like using nicotine patches or gum.
Yep.
Like before they learn something or learning a new task or skill.
Yep.
And I've been, I'm always looking for new things to add in my arsenal.
Absolutely. And I've always said that the poison is in the dose, right? So there's a purpose for it, and it's exactly what you're talking about. The patch or the gum for someone who's not a smoker probably has some benefit in certain situations.
Right.
However, if you're a smoker, well, the clue is they use the patches and the gums to quit.
Right.
Right. So they're coming down off that nicotine, I guess, high. But if you're always buzzing, right, it's a different world. That's why it's not good for you.
Right.
In addition to cancer and all the other stuff that the smoke, the carcinogens actually cause.
Right. Yeah, they snuck that.
Yep, snuck that in.
They snuck that. They snuck that. That's why they always say a heroin addict will give up his heroin before he gives up his cigarettes.
Right. That's absolutely true.
Right. Nicotine is like no joke.
Right.
I never got into tobacco products.
Yeah.
Never got into tobacco
Yeah,
products.
me neither.
My dad made me and my brother smoke a cig when we were like, I think I was like in the 3rd grade.
Yep.
And I remember he made us smoke a cig.
So you wouldn't like it.
So we wouldn't like it. And it worked on me, but it didn't work on my brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
It worked on me.
He's like, wow, this is great. Thanks, Dad. He's running to the store to get cigarettes in the 4th grade.
It took him a little bit longer to get on the cigarette train, but I think he got the taste of it at that time, and then he was hooked.
Yeah.
And then I also, you know how it is in sports, like a lot of guys like dip,
Right.
And I played offensive line, and the offensive line room is like dip central. Everybody's packing big dips.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, everybody in the offensive line room's got a big dip in. They got a water bottle with them. They're spitting it in. I'm the only guy that's not spitting.
Oh my God.
So I would like get shit for not dipping in the room. But I'm like, I'm the only one here that gets women. You know what I mean? I'm the only buddy in this room that's getting laid right now. So
there's got to be something to it.
That's what I told myself. It was always gross to me. I remember one time I put a dip in. I chewed at a party in like high school. Yeah. And I like almost vomited. I got like super nauseous and was like about to vomit. And I was like trying not to vomit because I had to keep cool. You know, it couldn't be a loser throwing up.
Exactly.
And then there was like 2 other times throughout like life where I was like, this is gross, but let me try it again. Maybe I'll like it this time. And then I was just like, no, never again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that I never tried that. My mom actually tried the same thing on me and my brother with beer. Same exact concept, but
didn't work.
Yeah.
Sometimes just a nice cold beer just hits the spot.
Right. It does.
You know, the key is to keep it between 1 to 2.
Right.
That's what I've found. 2 beers, that's a good spot to be.
Well, and we talk about that stuff. And again, I brought it up before, the poisons in the dose. You know, there are physiologic benefits to alcohol and coffee, particularly black coffee.
Right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Which include anti-cancer, anti-aging, antioxidant, brain health, heart health. All those things. But the problem is people get into deep water when they abuse those things, right?
Yeah.
And they go over their limits. So because men and women are, you know, on average generally different size, different metabolisms, whole 9 yards, women's optimal dose is between 0 and 1 serving a day
of alcohol
and
coffee.
Or coffee.
Okay,
Black
cool.
Coffee. And that at that point they get all the benefit and none of the drawbacks. Again, they could have that dose every day if they want. Where they get in the trouble is, let's say, well, I didn't have any coffee all week. Well, on the weekend, I'm going to have 3 or 4 cups, maybe a cup of coffee with dessert after dinner. So now all of a sudden they're at 5 or 6 cups in just one day. That's where they run into trouble. Because now they've just traded their potential daily benefit of 1 every single day, 7 cups a week, for 1 day of 5, which removed all the health benefit in one sweep. Gone.
So you would be better off a cup a day than you would be 3 or 4 or 5 cups in one day.
Absolutely, 100%. Because at that day, in the second one, you get no benefit.
Is that because of your body's ability to process caffeine?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Is it the caffeine that is where the
caffeine and other advantages in the black coffee itself?
Okay.
Antioxidants, things like that.
And so what is that's got to, I know with alcohol, your liver's the heavy lifter of the detoxification. Is it your liver also the detoxifier of caffeine?
That's a good question. That's a good question for a physiologist, probably a little bit smarter than me.
Okay.
I know the caffeine centers, the receptors are all over the body, particularly the brain.
Okay.
But in terms of detoxing it, I know that we all have certain genes
Right.
that help us metabolize caffeine. And some can like drink a cup of coffee or some form of caffeine right before bed and go right to sleep. Others are just jazzed and wired. Yeah, and they can't process it. They're slow metabolizers. Yeah. Yep. So for men get two servings, up to 2 servings a day. So when you talked about beer, 2 pints of beer, well, 2 cans. A serving is 12 ounces.
12 ounces.
Not quite a pint.
Right. And so that's probably where the wine is good for you adage came from.
Absolutely. And so beer has some benefits beyond the alcohol in terms of the wheat and the barley, the hops, the malt, all those things, right? Certain kind of carbs, right?
The fermentation process.
Exactly, all of that. And then the wine, the red wine, particularly Pinot Noir grape, right, has a lot of resveratrol in it.
That's my favorite. Pinot Noir is that's my go-to when I'm out.
Yeah, that's the number one grape for the resveratrol. So so when you drink that wine at your dose, which is again for wine would be 2 6-ounce pours a day.
Gotcha.
Up to 2 every single day if you want, right? So you could have 0, you could have 1, you could have 2 every day, and you'd get all benefit and no risk, no side effects, nothing bad.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be rejoiced in hearing that information.
But the problem is very few of us have self-control, right? To
keep it at 2.
Right.
So the second you go from 2 to 3,
benefits gone.
all the benefits disappear.
Right.
So you don't even get benefits from the 2 that you had.
Right.
Immediately goes to harm after 2.
That's the best way to think about it.
Damn.
Yep.
So it's like whatever good you had, you threw out the window the second you drank that third.
Exactly.
That third cup.
Yep.
A third 6-ounce wine glass.
Right.
Got to stay strong out there, my friends.
That's right. Stay strong.
Yeah, because my great grandparents are Italian immigrants.
Right.
They came from they're from Italy, a little village called a mountain village called Roccapia.
Oh, awesome.
50 miles east of Rome. And so when they came over, they were farmers.
Right.
When they came over to the States, first my great grandfather and my great uncle came over. They worked in the steel mills for about 3 years, made enough money to get a place and then be able to afford for my nonna, my great grandmother, and my grandfather to now move over to the States.
Wow.
And so, which is crazy to think about.
Right. It was a different time.
It always blows my mind to think about back then, there was no cell phone, right? They weren't seeing reels of
FaceTime.
America and what was going on over there.
Right.
There was maybe
a letter took a month.
a letter or a clipping in the newspaper maybe, or a poster at the town square where they were like, you know what, we're going to embark on this journey. It wasn't like they were getting Delta economy, right? They got on a boat and sailed for 4 weeks across, out of the Mediterranean, across the Atlantic to New York City.
Right. Crazy.
Yeah, when they would tell me the story, the room was next to the engine room.
Right.
So it was just super hot
and loud,
super loud for 4 weeks. But when they moved over to the States, they converted. They were just lawn made no sense to them. Grass, having well-kept grass made no sense to them. So they tilled the whole yard into a garden.
Wow.
So whenever I would go over to my great grandparents' place, there was no grass to mow. It was just hey, help us till the garden in the spring. And then I'd help them water it throughout the summertime. And then when fall started approaching, we would pick everything.
Right. Wow.
And I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. In Erie, Pennsylvania, we actually have a little outside of the metropolitan area is an area called Northeast Pennsylvania. And they are one of the top vineyards,
Really?
or less known vineyards, I should say, in the United States, but they grow a shit ton of grapes.
Really?
And so they would either get grapes from there or they would get them shipped from California. And in the basement, they had these giant 100-gallon wooden barrels that they cut in half. And they would throw the grapes in there. And I would go down there with my grandparents, and my Nona would like get her feet like barefoot.
So
and she would
actually stomp the grapes.
Stomp the grapes.
Really?
Stomp the grapes.
Oh my gosh.
And then they would ferment them, and then we just had like homemade grapes.
Wow.
Yeah. Or homemade wine, sorry. And so we always had wine.
Really?
Always had wine.
See, there you go.
And they would drink wine every day.
Yep.
Every day they would have a glass.
But never to excess.
Never to excess. I've never seen either one of them drunk.
Right.
Right? Or drink. There was literally like a glass at dinner.
Yep.
Maybe my Nona would have two. My grandfather would have 2 glasses of wine.
Yep.
But like that was it.
And they probably lived long, healthy, happy lives.
Yeah, they lived until they were 94, 95.
See?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of what we talked about last time in that. But also wine is part of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they ate out of a garden.
Yep.
They stayed active their whole lives.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they had a strong spiritual sector.
And they had big, strong relationships, lots of social connections, strong family relationships.
Every Thursday was spaghetti night, and every Sunday was like family dinner.
Right.
Not everyone made Thursday, but everyone made Sunday.
Right. See,
And
that's the thing.
yeah.
How many families do that?
None
these days.
Not very many.
Yeah.
That's something that I want to whenever the day comes that I have a family.
Right.
I want to like make that a tradition in my family.
I think that'd be awesome.
Every Sunday.
Can I be part of your family too?
Oh, you're already a part of my family.
Good. Okay.
You're already a part of my family.
Because I want to
dog.
come to that Sunday.
Hell
dinner.
yeah. There's going to be a lot of steaks at the
Yes, exactly. Ribeye.
Ribeye. That's right. Ribeye. Sometimes a New York strip.
Yeah,
Sometimes
maybe.
a New York strip.
Okay.
You know what I do a lot of sometimes? Picante, which is like they call a poor man's New York strip, but it's top sirloin with the fat cap still attached.
Right.
And I learned this from all my Brazilian friends because
Okay.
picante is like big in Brazil.
Okay.
And I remember when I was wrestling in WWE when I first got there, I met, there's a melting pot of different people from all different sectors of like athletics, but then also from all corners of the world.
Right.
And so, like anything or any new place, everybody comes in and they gravitate towards their people. So you have to like get a little cliquish and
Clicky,
like,
yeah.
right.
Yep.
Then everybody gets like comfortable enough to like mingle with everybody. And then I just remember going over with like the Brazilians for like barbecues on Sunday, and they would just have like for hors d'oeuvres and shit, they had like picante cut up. And it's just like someone walks around and you just like pick little pieces of steak, and it was just like delicious.
Really?
Just like some of the best steak. My grilling game went to the next level.
Went with picante.
Yeah, well, hanging out with my Brazilian friends, like learning some. I always had a pretty strong grill game, but they helped take it to the next. I learned some new techniques that kind of took it to the next level.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's good. Those are lifelong skills.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
And
But
something you can pass down to the next generation.
yeah, people listening to this, friends,
Exactly.
my little ones running around.
Yeah.
I imagine I'm probably gonna have a ton of girls.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I have a feeling I'm
have
gonna
that
just
feeling?
end up with a ton of girls. I'm just gonna keep going until I get one boy.
There you go.
That's my one boy. I don't mind having girls. Honestly, if I had 4 girls, 1 guy, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. I just need one of each.
Right.
I don't care how many. I don't care what the ratio is. I don't care what the ratio is. I just need one of each.
That's what I said the same thing. But after 2 boys, Nancy was like, no, we're done.
This is what I do with my partners is I tell them like, yo, I want to have 8 kids. That's
as a litmus test.
yeah, 8 kids. I want to have 8 kids. And they're all like, but the key is to say it dead serious.
Right.
I say it dead serious.
And if they don't make a mad dash out the front door,
right. But it's
got potential.
I set the bar high,
Right.
and then I make them like then the negotiate. Because really, in reality, like 3,
Right.
I'm cool with 3,
Right.
but I can talk them down.
There's
you know what I mean? I can make them feel like there's negotiation taking place.
There's a
I'm
sales
compromising.
strategy in that.
Yes,
Always ask for more than what you want.
right, right. I'm blowing my secret right now by telling the world this. But hopefully they don't hear this. Oh well, if it's out now, hopefully this helps somebody else out here. I'm sacrificing.
Right. I bet it will. It will.
I'm sacrificing for myself right now for the better good of everyone else.
That's right.
But then I can like come down. So then it's like maybe it's 5.
Right.
Because I like the idea of having an army of little Dans running around.
Right. In a big, huge truck or SUV or something like that.
Yeah. Hummer.
Yeah.
H1.
H1 old school Hummer. Yeah.
They do so like they do the remods of the H1s where they completely like civilianize the insides of them for comfort. Because those things, I don't know if you've
kind
ever
of like pimp my ride type of thing. Pimp my
H1. Not as like
off the chain.
like extravagant craziness, but
Viking grill on the inside. Hey, grill game. There you go.
Yeah,
bring it to the next level.
They bring because I don't know. Have you ever been in an H1?
Yes.
Not very comfortable.
Right.
They're not built for comfort.
No, and it's actually a funny story because it goes back to the days I had my own construction business.
Okay.
I worked for a lot of NFL players, right? And we just had great relationships. I would build them stuff like a pool or a big gazebo outside or an outdoor kitchen, entertaining area, whatever. And then we'd become friends, right? And hang out and go to parties and stuff like that. Lots of stories there, Dan. Little white guy, bunch of huge football players.
Right.
Oh, that was great. But anyways, long story short, hung out with a guy and his wife, guy was Lester Holmes. He was a wonderful man, a monster of a man who played offensive line. And for a while he played for the Cardinals, but he was kind of he came and went and had a couple of different teams that he played for. I lost track of him over time, but I think he was from Georgia somewhere, from the South, or maybe Alabama, somewhere around here. But anyways, long story short, he had a black H1, and he took me for a ride in it. And the thing I noticed, I remember, because I sat in the passenger seat shotgun, it's like, hey, man, how you do? Because it's so wide.
Yeah.
You're far away from each other in that thing. But it felt cool to be in that.
Yeah. Well, so from a they're virtually indestructible vehicles, right? You can blow off one of the wheel wells and it'll keep driving.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they were built for war. So that's the appeal to me. It's like, having a vehicle that maybe nothing's ever going to happen, but if something does happen, you're going to want to have a
There's
vehicle.
There's going to be Dan and his 5 kids, 4 girls, 1 boy, and his wife.
Yes.
Rolling down the street.
Prepared.
In that H1.
Prepared. Yep. Ready to go.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I've always wanted an H1, so we'll have an H1 and have a little spot in there. So awesome. We were talking, so we got a little bit off track of what you were. That's what you do when you talk, though. Exactly. You know what I mean? You got the main story, then you got side stories, but the side stories loop back into the main story.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I was still giving my background, I think, to new listeners. So med school, and then went to residency, got board certified in emergency medicine. So
what was the catalyst that made you go from, police officer, construction, having your own construction company, to then being like, you know what, I want to become a doctor? Right.
Yeah, it was an interesting genesis, and I don't want to give too much away either, I guess, but maybe for the benefit of other folks out there, I think I'll go into it a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
So right after my undergrad, I had, actually, while I was still in college, I got married to my lovely lady, Nancy. And we were just starting a family, right? Just had bought our first house, right? Everything was just getting started in our lives together. She got a great job with a major food company and had a company car, expense account. She was a manufacturer's rep. And then I got a job selling paper, like Dunder Mifflin. But soon after that, I got into pharmaceutical sales. So I was a drug rep. So at that point, we were both what I call affectionately trunk slammers. At that time, we had samples and stuff in our trunk, and so we'd show up to a call, we'd open our trunk, grab our stuff, and slam our trunk and go in. But that came with, like I said, the company car, expense account, expenses paid. It was pretty good life for two young kids,
Right.
just married, still no kids of themselves. What they used to call us, dinks, double income, no kids.
That's not a bad place to be.
Yeah, it was good.
At least for a time period.
And then I came home one day and I said, because I was thrilled with pharmaceutical sales, and I loved the whole medical concept. I loved all the science and the physiology. I loved figuring out how the body worked. I mean, that just piqued my interest. So I said, I came home one day in our young lives together, newly married, new house, planning a family, and said, well, I'm going to quit my job and go back to school. You can imagine how that conversation went.
Right.
Yeah.
I can.
So at that point, became kind of a series of what I call professional distractions. And if we talk a little bit about behavioral health, right, and kind of self-analyzing what happened, I had never kind of overcome or gotten comfortable with the idea of, I know I can do something. I want to do something, but I can't. So what I need is something more flashy and exciting and engaging and interesting to distract me and my mind from what it is that I really want. And that works for a while, but eventually the shine dulls and it wears off because you've never dealt with or addressed the root cause, the one thing that's just kind of sitting there bubbling under the surface. So what happened was I started my own construction company, and I thought, okay, I'm going to build a dynasty, right? My kids will be part of all this, and I'm going to have a wonderfully successful business, and it's going to be great. But then after 4 years, 5 years, it was like, this doesn't excite me anymore. The allure was gone. And I still at that time didn't think, well, then what I want to do is get into medicine. I still thought I couldn't or shouldn't. So then I got into law enforcement. Well, that was from my brother. My brother's a career law enforcement officer. He retired. He's living a life of leisure now. He did things a smart way. But he had always great stories to tell, right? And with those stories, who wouldn't also want to wear a uniform and a badge and a gun around their belt and drive their car on the sidewalk with lights and sirens and arrest bad guys and help communities and help people and stuff like that? I mean, it was a wonderfully fun job. But again, over time, the excitement wore off.
That's what I went to school for, was criminology.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So at that point, I think what happened was I had a buddy of mine in the police department who was also in the National Guard, and he's like, "Hey, man, you should join the National Guard, and you can get double retirement, and you get all these benefits, and it's fun." And at the time, I was like kind of interested, but I told him, I said, I wouldn't do that unless I could be a Green Beret. Thinking, there's no way they would have a part-time soldier be a Green Beret or a SEAL or somebody like that. He's like, oh yeah, we got those. So I went home, I told Nancy, I'm going to be a Green Beret. She said, no, you're not. And so I have her to thank. We have her to thank for kind of redirecting and getting me back on track. Finally, after those professional distractions.
That's what a good woman will do, though.
Absolutely. So we went to dinner that night. I remember it like it was yesterday. She goes, look, I see what's happening, right? Even though you don't realize it, but your distractions are putting our family like through more twists and turns and ups and downs than if you just bite the bullet and go to school. By this time, we had 2 kids that were in grade school, like young. She's like, well, there's no good time, but there's never going to be. And she knew enough to predict what the rest of our married life would be like with all these changes and all these different things that would come around. What's next? What's next? at least with medicine, she knew what I was going to do,
Right.
no matter what. So she got me back on track, and then I thought in my brain, well, all right, cool. Now I got this plan in front of me. I better get myself ready. So I took my time. I was very, very methodical, and thought, well, I'm going to test myself first by going to school and getting a master's degree in biochemistry. Now, this is a guy who got a C in college algebra in my undergrad.
Right.
But I never could get rid of this thing that was eating at me. And again, it was part of, I think, looking back, self-analyzing, it was part of, I think, that repressed idea of, hey, I want to go to med school and I'm good enough to go to med school. So in all those times when I was a cop, I had my own construction company, all that stuff I told you about, I had never stopped going to school. I was taking night classes.
Right.
And I couldn't tell you why. Dude, why are you taking calculus 1 and 2 and each in a 6-week summer course, which equates to 6 credits? You're a fool. I'm like, I don't know. But I got a B, so 6 credits worth of a B is even better than an A.
Oh, yeah.
And so I took both calculus courses. I took Spanish language. I took a whole bunch of classes that I don't even know why I did. Just part-time, community college stuff.
There's something about always continuously learning.
Yeah. So it really gave me part of the energy I was probably seeking in those other careers, those other jobs. So when I finally, gave myself permission, that's really when things started to turn, right? Because I needed Nancy's blessing to give then myself permission to pursue my dream. And that's when, the rubber meets the road and I was off and running. So I decided to test myself by getting a master's degree in biochemistry. And that was a big challenge because I got my bachelor's degree is in psychology, right? And I was never a science geek or a science nerd in school or in college. I had that mind, I had that curiosity. I was interested, but never had the skills until I started going to night classes because I wanted to, not even really knowing why, but because it was my thing, right? So then I got this, I got into a program at Arizona State University, biochemistry. And I told them what I wanted to do, and I was pretty much myself, and told the graduate advisor I wanted to work on her team. Turns out she was the chair of the selection committee, and boom, she not only admitted me to the program, she gave me a job, so I was making money, and she paid for my school. And then I became the protein chemist I talked about, right? And at the same time I was doing all this, I had to make a little extra money to support the family, do my share. So I taught. That's where I taught at the community college, and then I also taught at Arizona State University. Organic chemistry, anatomy, physiology, all that fun stuff. And then med school rolled right into that. So, dude, I'm literally a lifelong learner, like not just figuratively, literally. So yeah, and then that rolled. So med school was 4 years. And that rolled right into a 4-year residency program in emergency medicine. So that right there is 8 years, plus the 2 years of master's degree. So right there, you're at 10 years of training, plus the 4 years of bachelor's, so that's 14. Plus, I never really stopped going to school between bachelor's and my master's, just part-time.
Right.
So yeah, I wore a backpack for many years, decades.
Well, what is that? What is that? So that's 12 years of from making the decision. Hey, and there's this little twinge in the back of my head that's telling me that I'm not on the right path.
Right.
And then taking that action to seeing it like all the way through to
Exactly.
to become a doctor.
Yep. 10 years.
10 years.
Yep.
So for everybody out there who's like in their, that are late 20s, early 30s that are like, oh, it's too late. What am I going to do? I'm behind.
Right.
it's not, it's not too
Right,
late.
right.
You're just
You
like
can-
literally you're just getting started.
Yeah, exactly. You can be behind, right? You just got to start moving, move forward.
Well, what is behind?
Right. What's it relative to?
Right. I was actually having this conversation with a friend, actually earlier today, I think it was, or last night. The behind concept, and a lot of people around my age feel that, right?
Right.
They're like, oh, I see peers that are, doing so well, or people that are younger than them doing so well, and they start comparing. Especially with social media, has made it really easy to like compare yourself to other people.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, I'm behind. I'm behind. And to be behind would mean that like someone else is going to have to walk the same exact path as you,
Right.
and that you're behind them.
Right.
But like the thing is nobody ever walks the same exact path.
Right.
So therefore you never can be behind somebody.
Absolutely.
And so by being behind, one, that actually doesn't exist, but two, by thinking that, you've now framed this illogical, non-existent framing that is going to imprison you.
Absolutely. And it's really nothing more than a figment of your imagination.
Most of the things we suffer are our own imagination.
Absolutely.
So for everybody out there, it's like, hey, if you want to do something, it ain't too late. It's
Absolutely.
never too late.
Never too late.
If you have breath in your lungs,
Yep.
it's go time.
Exactly. And there's a nice like exclamation point to that. And it's the whole idea of how, taking in what I said is, and it helps a lot. As an athlete, it helps, right? Especially golfers, right? They benefit by thinking this way. But the point is, and it's getting philosophical with it, the point is that the past and the future are nothing but figments of our imaginations.
Mm-hmm.
What's here and now in this moment is what matters. You can't necessarily predict or guarantee a certain outcome, but you can control what's happening now. Right. And if you apply that to the whole idea, it's never too late. There it is.
Yeah.
Never too late. You want something now, then you make paths to go that way. Take steps.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yep.
So that led you into now your practice.
Right. So what happened
But
was...
first, I don't,
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if you told me this or if Kay told me this about you. But you were running how many different emergency rooms
So,
at one point?
right. So what I did as soon as I finished my training is I pretty much got into leadership roles right away.
Okay.
Right. And I began to lead other physicians and manage emergency departments in hospitals, first around Michigan, but then all over the country. And so I still do that a little bit,
Okay.
just a little. But I also, for a time, there was like 5 or 6 years, where my job literally was to, and this was just before, during, and just after COVID, was to travel to ERs in need all across the country. Every place from South Carolina to Maine to Texas to Idaho, New Mexico, Wisconsin. I was all over.
Yeah.
And that's part of what led me to my practice today, right? And seeing that side of humanity suffer in the ways that they did. And like we talked about last time, most of it either directly or indirectly self-imposed. It really made me sit back and think a little bit about the state of our so-called healthcare system and our behavioral health care system, right? Both of those. And we are, as people, generally, by and large, have become victims of that system. And it's not really a healthcare system at all. It's a sick care system. Because the system as it stands today, big pharma, big insurance, big hospital, big government. The system needs sick people.
Right.
So there's very little interest to
Prevent
and keep people healthy. And more powerfully, help people understand that they have within them everything they need to live a healthy, happy, long life. Everybody now is conditioned to think they'll find the answer in the bottom of a pill bottle or somewhere else, right? So that led to what I do now, lifestyle medicine.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
My mind just like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. So like you were traveling to emergency rooms, is that correct?
Yep.
ER rooms. So you're traveling to ERs all around the country before, during, and after COVID.
Yep.
So first thing there, what was that like before, during, and after? What were the big differences you saw before, during, and after?
Absolutely. It was crazy. So before COVID, we would see all sorts of people and different problems in different states in the emergency department. A lot of times you just scratch your head because of a lack of or perceived lack of access to everyday care. I would take care of people who took an ambulance to the emergency department so that they could get a pregnancy test. Yeah. It's a whole nother world. And then maybe my next patient would be dying and I would need to put them on life support.
Damn.
And from one to the next, right? And it would go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that's a product of our system. And so the ERs, by and large, were overrun and overwhelmed with people. Probably at most 20% of them, maybe 25, having anything close
To an emergency.
to an emergency.
What do you think why do you think that is? What do you think that's a product of?
It's a product of our system, right? The hospitals love it because they,
Ambulance ride, ka-ching.
Yep, a lot of bills, a lot of revenue, right? Insurance company loves it, right? Because they're getting more revenue, more money. And the doctors, the primary care doctors that are in the community and the specialists are overwhelmed themselves, partly because of the number of patients seeking their help, but also because of all the hurdles they got to jump over because of the insurance companies and because of the hospitals, that they make all these rules and guidelines and little things they have to follow so that they're only profitable if they can see 30 or 40 patients a day. And then maybe they get paid on 70% of them.
Right. Because the insurance doesn't pay out.
Exactly.
I found it interesting when I was paying out of pocket and I let a doctor know I was paying out of pocket and I wasn't going to pay with insurance.
You went right to the top of the schedule.
Exactly. And the bill was different.
Right.
They didn't charge me the same amount that the insurance company would be charged because
even with your copay and your out of pocket.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Because he was explaining to me was that the insurance company will only pay up front. So say it's $1,000 bill.
Right.
The insurance company may not even pay half of that.
Right.
Right. Like 30%
Right.
if they're lucky.
Right.
Of that. So like say it was $1,000 bill that when I first saw, I was like, oh damn, I'm gonna pay this out of pocket. And then he found out I had to pay it out of pocket, and it got dropped exponentially because he knew I was paying it.
Exactly. And the issue with that whole thing is that the insurance company might only pay half of it, if that. Plus, you got to pay your copay.
Right. Plus,
if you haven't met your deductible yet, you might pay the whole thing to the insurance company. So they're pocketing the difference.
I have found, I've been sheltered from the insurance world for quite a bit of my life, being very fortunate as being a professional athlete, the majority of my adult life.
Right.
So I always had the best insurance, healthcare that like money could buy. And then I circumvented the actual medical system because all the teams or companies I worked for had athletic doctors, essentially, well, doctors that worked with athletes on site.
Right.
So if I needed an MRI, I wasn't going through the normal systems.
Yeah, exactly.
I was getting sent and like going through the back, and
Right.
or the facility had an MRI machine or an X-ray machine. Like I was having a completely different experience.
Right.
And over the last 3 years, starting to be like having to be an adult in this sector, being like,
wait a minute.
well, I gotta get a checkup. You know what I mean? What? I'm like, I've got to do what? I've got to go to the dentist. I've got to go to the optometrist. All this shit.
Right.
How do I do this? Like, there's nobody just like giving me like, hey, Dan, go here, be here. I'm like, this blows.
Yeah, exactly. So we were overrun in the ERs, right, with people before COVID. And then when COVID hit, all those people stopped coming. Whew, they were gone. And then during COVID, we either saw COVID, broken bones, or heart attacks, strokes, or people who need to be put on life support. Here's the funny thing. The percentage of heart attacks and strokes we saw during COVID actually went down. So in other words, people spending more time at home, and here's the other thing. They weren't dying at home either. So you'd think, wait a second. Here we have this worldwide global pandemic, and it's killing some people. But there's still got to be other bad stuff going on.
Right.
Still has to be heart attacks. I mean,
the world didn't stop.
Right. So the COVID just added to it, right?
Right.
Well, not only did the BS visits, you know, the girl looking for the pregnancy test, stuff like that, stop, right? But people had less heart attacks and less strokes and weren't dying at home. So in other words, heart attacks and strokes during COVID went down. And the only reason that I can see that is clear to me, especially in lifestyle medicine, is because people were spending time at home with their loved ones. They were working less.
Right.
Even though COVID was out there, in most ways that were meaningful, they were less stressed than they normally are.
Right.
So some really interesting stuff in that.
That's wild.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. And it underlines the importance of some of the things that we typically take for granted, especially in this country.
Yeah.
So to stay on track.
Yeah. I think that to get off track.
Yeah.
I think that is, because I'm, people that may know me or see me from a distance, via the world, think that I'm this very probably we're gonna go get after it, work hard, work harder, which isn't too far from the truth.
Right.
But I think we put too much of an emphasis on working, hustle,
right,
and not enough relationships, not enough relaxation.
Exactly.
Right. And it's or we put too much of the emphasis, because sometimes I don't feel like even though I am working quite often and on a lot of shit.
Right.
The things that I'm working on, I feel energized from. I feel like they fulfill me.
Right.
So I don't know if I feel the same stress as other people that, I have certain clients that I train that work for big companies,
right?
Pretty big, high performing companies where you've got to be a high performer.
Right.
You're on call basically all day.
Right.
Right. And you could get a call at any time a partner may call you and it's yo, it's go time.
Right.
And it may be 12 o'clock at night and you've got to go. When they come, half of me training them is de-stress, getting them to breathe before we even
exactly.
start training to de-stress them. And though you may find meaning in that somehow, some way, it's not really that work is, not to belittle that line of work.
Right.
What in the grand scheme of things, those type of jobs are doing what for you?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And I think we saw during COVID, a lot of people resigned from those jobs.
Right.
Right. And people were having a hard time getting people to come back into the workforce after the lockdowns were over.
Yep.
Because people were like, hold on a second. Divorce rates went up.
Perspective.
Divorce rates went up, and unemployment went up. And I think a part of that is because people actually finally spent times with their loved one and been like, oh, we actually don't like each other. Exactly. We spent so much time. I've spent so much time working. I never had to be around you. And now that I'm stuck with you, we're getting a divorce. We're splitting. Or two, I actually love my family.
Right.
I don't get to spend enough time with it, and I actually fucking hate my job.
Exactly.
So like, I'll make half as less that I was making doing some bullshit job if I can spend more time with my family.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and there's so much energy that comes from that. That's healing, and that keeps us healthy. It's underrated.
I think COVID is a blessing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because I think it helped, especially in this country, it helped pull the veil of like hustle, work, like the things that we're told are important. For a brief blimp in time, we had the sheet pulled off our head, and we got to see like, oh damn, that shit's not really that important.
Exactly.
And like, I need to start like work, like, just for a second, the room was illuminated.
Right.
And it was like, some people are going to just go right back to that thought process, but other people are going to be looking around.
Right.
Thinking like, oh man, maybe I could do something more meaningful rather than like trying to aim to make $250,000 a year and have the car and this and a house and talk about God knows what with my other friends who are doing the same shit.
Right. Exactly.
Like, let me do something that's actually going to help my family, help my community, like give back to others, right, in the process. So I think to what you said about that thought process is healing. I think as a whole, like as a collective, there is this opportunity. I think we're already undergoing it, and there's an opportunity if we really dive in it to really heal as a collective.
Yep. I agree with you 100%.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I interrupted you somewhere with.
Oh yeah, because I said to get back on track, and you said to get us off track. But those diversions are good.
No,
I think
for
that's
sure.
Great.
I mean, that's how conversations roll, right?
Right. So I think the question was what was it like in the ERs before, during, and after COVID? And so I was talking about during COVID and how interesting it was that there weren't a lot of heart attacks and strokes dying at home, yet they weren't coming to the ER. So to me, that means that the heart attacks and the stroke went down during COVID. Well, so then, of course, COVID happened and everything went through, and that's how some hospitals closed, little ones, small critical access hospitals. They couldn't survive.
Yeah, we were being told the hospitals were overrun.
Right. And some were. Major metro areas, those hospitals were overrun with COVID. I mean, you had people being cared for in tents and outside and all those lines with the testing. And there was panic and pandemonium there for a while.
Right.
In the thick of it, the big metro areas, they were overrun. The smaller community-based hospitals, though, they pretty much dried up. If they were in a low population center and people were they were obeying the rules and staying home. And then even though a lot of people got COVID, a lot of people didn't die from it.
Right.
Right. And now it's even less people die from it, right? Because it's just viruses are smarter than us. And in order for the virus to survive, it's eventually going to become one of the many COVID viruses that are responsible for the common cold.
Right.
It's going to eventually become that.
Yeah.
Because it's foolish of a virus to kill its host.
Because it can't spread.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Right. So we're going to, I mean, we already are living with COVID now, but during that time, slowly but surely, and like I said, hospitals closed, ER docs lost their jobs. Like when you finish your residency training in emergency medicine, a lot of times what will happen is you'll sign a contract like 6 months before you graduate for a job.
Yeah.
And then you move to that area, you're getting ready to buy a house, or maybe you buy a house, you get all your life situated because you're like, hey man, in 6 to 4 months, I'm done with this, and those contracts were canceled.
Oh.
Like, sorry, we don't have your job anymore. You're on your own. So all that effort, all that time. So there were some residents graduating from emergency medicine programs that didn't have a job to go to, but they of course had all the student loans they had to start paying back, all the other stuff.
Right, of course.
Right.
Bills never stop rolling in.
Exactly.
You had to stop going to work, but we weren't going to stop charging you.
Exactly. And then there were other docs who were still working in the ERs who had their pay cut. Some still haven't had it come back yet. Staffing was cut. So when some ERs, they would have maybe a total of 8 doctors coming on shift throughout a day. Maybe they went to 6 or 5 because the volumes were down. And they still haven't come all the way back up to the staffing levels. But after COVID, to get to that part of it, slowly but surely, everything started coming back. All the BS, all the heart attacks, all the strokes, all the accidents, all the trauma, all the really sick people, and a few COVID sprinkled here and there. But now pretty much ERs are back to normal. But to your point earlier, the ER workforce shrunk. 2 things happened, and now most hospitals are in a bad situation because they are actually hurting for ER docs. And what this means is for example, what happened during COVID, people who were in medical school thinking of a career in emergency medicine from the sidelines saw jobs go away, pay being cut, contracts being canceled. So they're like, well, I'm not going into emergency medicine. That field is dead.
Right.
Right? That field is dead. So for 2 years, people stopped applying to emergency medicine residencies. And so all of a sudden, the numbers just drop. Right? So now, this year, there were 500 spots in residency programs all across the country that went unfilled.
Damn.
And that's the first time in a long time. And part of the other problem is not only were there less people applying to emergency medicine, which is going to take a couple of years to get back, because the market's moving faster than the supply of people to fill the roles.
Right.
Not only that, but during COVID, because of all these problems with pays and cut in pay and cut in hours and cut in roles and positions, people said, screw this. I'm done. I'm out. And so they retired. Or they changed careers. They pivoted. They did something else. They got out of the ER workforce. And at the time they left, they were so pissed and burnt out, they'll never come back. No matter how good it gets. Right. So there are a couple forces at play.
So there's a double whammy there.
Double whammy. And now, because all those people just started rushing back to the ER, the pregnancy tests,
Right.
I have an ingrown toenail, the rash, all these other things are now coming back, along with all the other really sick people. Now, hospital ERs are busy again, really busy, and they need doctors. So now they got to raise the rates. They got to make it more attractive, more lucrative.
Right.
But to a degree, they're speaking to far fewer people than they did before.
Right.
Because people didn't apply to the residency programs, and a lot of people retired. So after COVID, there's what's building is enormous financial stress and strain on the hospitals, because even though the numbers are back, they're having to spend more money on those people, more money on more people to get them cared for. And so it's really kind of a cancer that's growing on an already terrible system. right? Because we can go all the way back to the beginning and ask ourselves, why in the world, in what universe, in what alternate universe would I want to support or be a part of a healthcare system that encourages or even makes people have an idea that I'm going to call 911 and take an ambulance to the hospital because I want the same pregnancy test that I can get at Walmart for just a couple bucks.
Right.
In what alternate universe would anybody want to be a part of that system that encourages that kind of thinking or behavior? Because believe me, it's not costing that patient any money, right? But it's costing you and me. Someone's got to pay that ambulance ride,
Right.
right? And it's just one person in the whole history that I'm talking about. But multiply that by every minute, every hour, every day across the whole country.
Right.
I mean,
So part of the reason why people's premiums are so high,
right,
is because collectively we have all of these people needing, air quotes for people who are just listening,
right,
needing
right,
to go to the ER, needing to go to the doctor, when these are simple, like there are a lot of very simple things that could be tended for preemptively.
Exactly.
Right. And
so it's either a perceived lack of access or a real lack of access. And it's also conditioning. Because again, even though our system is being crushed by that as an example, the system actually needs it.
Right. To survive.
To survive. The system is its own worst enemy.
Right.
Like a lot of people, like a lot of us.
So what do you think, what's the solution? What's the way out of this? We've kind of pigeonholed us here in this situation.
Yes.
There's a lot of very cynical people out there, tinfoil hat people out there that would say big pharma, big insurance are perpetuating this because this is what they want. They want this to happen, right? Yeah. Which there's probably some truth to that, right? If you know if you know anything about these companies, I think some of the cynicism, right, and the skepticals out there have very valid points, because there are actual cases and situations that have taken place, and you're like, if you were a person and you did that, you would go to jail for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, it's actually quite amazing that it's, in a lot of ways, it's true. So give you an example with behavioral health.
What is behavioral health?
Behavioral health is anxiety, depression, PTSD.
Gotcha.
Those things. Mental health, AKA mental health.
Gotcha.
So an example with behavioral health, back in the, I think, 80s, maybe the 90s, I think it was the 80s, there was a drug company that came out with a drug, and it was the first of its kind, and it was an anti-anxiety medication. And it just so happens that the scientists who worked for this drug company got together with the folks who wrote the book, who told psychiatrists what diseases were out there and how to treat them. They actually came up with a diagnosis, and they called it anxiety. So they took a normal human emotion, and because the drug company had developed a pill that made that emotion feel better, then all of a sudden the doctor started prescribing the pill.
So then they made this normal human emotion and turned it into a sickness.
Exactly. And now, how many people do you know that say, well, I have anxiety?
Dude, that blows my mind. Particularly I have a niece. She's 15 years old.
Right.
She talks all the time about having anxiety now.
So here's
I'm
what
like,
you say.
what the fuck does a 15-year-old know about anxiety?
Exactly. And furthermore, it's normal.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
And here, let me help you learn how to deal with it.
Okay. Right.
Right. I'm not, and again, I'm not dismissing or being dismissive of people who struggle. the struggle is real.
Right.
It's not all in your head,
Right.
right?
That it's a real feeling.
It's a real feeling. So there's no sense in somebody like poo-pooing it or discounting it. It's real. However, the system has made it so that we no longer have the capacity, willingness, or capability to deal with it or to treat it in the ways that humans did for millennia. Do you think anxiety is a new problem, a new emotion? I mean, what about when, humans were being chased by lions, tigers, and bears?
Right.
That's a pretty damn anxious scenario.
Yeah.
Right? They dealt with it. Maybe they chewed on some root or bark of a tree or hung out with family or did something, went to sleep. But they dealt with it, and they didn't have an anti-anxiety pill, right?
That could be sold to them.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And
how can a pharmaceutical company, right, come up with a drug and then influence doctors, how doctors diagnose? How is that possible? Like that seems like a conflict of interest, and two, doesn't make sense as a doctor, right? Your job is to learn about the body, right? Physical, mental, spiritual.
Right.
And then how those things kind of seem set. Obviously we're learning new things about the body constantly,
Right.
but for a pharmaceutical company to come in and dictate what a doctor knows or how does that happen?
it's all sales and marketing, right? And it's all sales and marketing overlaid on top of conditioning. So just give you one example. So a doctor in many ways, especially today, not so true in the 50s and 60s when medicine was different, but especially today, a doctor is kind of a slave to the idea that if a patient comes in and asks for XYZ, or worse yet, presents with XYZ symptoms, I have these standards and these guidelines, notwithstanding Press Ganey and satisfaction surveys and the little surveys that the hospital sends out at the end that are probably tied to either my job as in terms of longevity or my pay somehow, either being docked in pay or getting a bonus if I act in ways according to the rules and the guidelines that either my hospital or my insurance company tell me I have to do. And then sales and marketing comes on top of that and says, hey, we got the answer to your problem. You need good scores. You need good patient satisfaction. In other words, doctor, you want to keep your job? You want to make a little more money? Or do you not want to lose any money? Well, here's the answer. Here's this pain pill, right? This will take away your patient's pain. And of course, the hospital, every time that someone comes in and says, rate your pain on a scale of 1 to 10.
Right.
For a while there, at the very beginning and through the peak of the opioid crisis, they called pain the fifth vital sign.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was to essentially indiscriminately treat pain, which conditioned us to believe there was such a thing that should be strived for as a pain-free existence.
Right. Right.
That's not human.
Right.
What do we want to be, a bunch of robots?
Right.
There's no such thing as a pain or suffering-free existence. It's part of the human experience. There has to be times of pain. There has to be times of suffering. Has to be times of anxiety. Has to be times of depression and grief.
Almost seems like a prerequisite to get to the next level.
Exactly.
As a human.
Right.
We go through these peaks and valleys of good times, bad times, good times, bad times. The bad times, there's usually a good deal of pain somewhere.
Exactly. And going through that process helps us. And the problem is that we're conditioned, not only everything I talked about, we're also conditioned to run away from that. And that was an example of my professional distractions when we first started talking. I was kind of running away from the idea that I couldn't or shouldn't go to med school. But by running away to it, I wasn't necessarily running to something else, right? So it's kind of the same movement in the same direction, but for different reasons. One's a good reason, and one's a bad reason.
Right.
You don't be running away from something to something else. You want to be running to that thing.
Right.
It's kind of like what they say with dog training, right? If your little puppy runs out and escapes out of your house, they say, don't chase after it. Run the other way.
Right.
Then the dog will go, wonder where he's going.
Right.
Come trotting back. So in a lot of ways, the system has conditioned us to run away from things that are part of the normal human experience. And then we don't learn from it. We don't grow from it. There's a lot of people, I'll say my age, my generation, right? And they look back and they say, we talked about it. We were joking about it this morning. Pre-workout, right? I was teasing you one of your last social media posts. I took it as, hey, you don't need pre-workout. Just get to work,
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a qualifier to that, so I respect that. But I took it as what, Dan, didn't you say in your last post that your pre-workout is nothing more than grit and mental toughness?
I mean, to an extent, for sure. I mean, I take pre-workout at times. You know what I mean? I have taken pre-workout.
Yeah, I totally get that. But my misunderstanding or my mishearing your post has meaning here, and that is a lot of people in my generation and older think or feel like, God dang, where is the grit and mental toughness?
Yeah.
It's disappeared. By and large, on average, right? There's exceptions to every rule, but by and large, on average, it seems like the appearance is there's a lack of that.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think my generation and the generation below me has a deficiency in grit and mental toughness.
Right.
Now, I think maybe your generation almost had too much, what we may say, grit and a little less emotional, like intelligence.
Right.
Right. And where it was like, I think the reason why my generation swung in the opposite direction was because your generation was we saw all the pitfalls of that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then instead of taking all the good that comes from that, and using that, a lot of people they ran the opposite way.
Right. And reacted in the setting of pressures and influences from our system, which is a consumer-based system.
Yeah.
And when you apply that to healthcare, it's the same concept. When the pendulum is swinging, but in a universe of influence, it swings off kilter. It's not swinging in the same path.
Right.
So it might be bumped to swing in the other direction, but off center.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and another thing with our generation is I think we looked at, one, somebody raised our generation. Which was your generation.
Exactly. So we have our own influence, and we talked about that time too. We're a product of our environment. So.
Right. Your generation raised our generation.
Right.
I think there was a lot of coddling, though.
Right.
I think there was a lot of coddling. There continues to be a lot of coddling that has taken place.
Yep.
Right. And some of that might be because of how harsh your parents' generation was on you guys.
Yeah.
You didn't want to perpetuate, which I think we're learning that we don't necessarily have to be so hard all the time. But there's like there's a middle ground, right? Like we were talking about, there is a place for suffering.
Balance. Right.
There is a place for suffering and pain.
Right.
It's a prerequisite, especially for boys.
Right.
Right. I mean, for all humans, but particularly boys need more pain
Right.
and suffering, more adversity in their lives.
Yeah.
Women they're born with a like their prerequisite of pain and adversity. Where like us boys, and you know, we're much harder headed. We need some.
Yep.
We need.
We need to learn the lesson.
Yeah, we need to learn some lessons. We need a hard club to the head
right.
sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly.
To help us get to, you know, to travel from boyhood into manhood.
Right.
So I always lean back to participation trophies.
Right. Oh, there we go.
You know, like my generation was the first generation that started getting participation trophies.
Right.
And I think people joke about it all the time, but I think we can point to that and be like, this might be the start of why we've got so many softies.
Exactly. Yep.
I think we've got a lot of softies.
You win if you participate. Yeah.
Right.
That concept is, because again, it's not survival of the fittest. And for millennia, it was survival of the fittest. You know, that's how we evolved, right?
I think that there's something to everybody like feeling included, right? People need to feel included. They should be included, especially in team sports or any type of sports. But to get a trophy, like a trophy is held for the winners, right? If it's track and field, it's like the 6 winners, right? You get, you know, a little different than other sports, but you get the 6 medal spots. In team sports, there's a winner and loser. You win the tournament, you get the trophy.
Right.
There is something to that. I think we've put too much of an emphasis on it's okay. I think this is where people who are not athletes or who've never been in a competitive atmosphere or never played team sports started legislating stuff and saying, we need trophies and we need to be more inclusive. And it's like, they don't understand that some of the best, not some of, all of the greatest lessons one can be learned in losing a game.
Exactly.
You can become and evolve into your best self by losing games.
100% agree with
Losing is not actually losing. Some of the most some of the most joyous moments in my life, not at the time, but now looking back, are the ones that I coveted the most, I guess, are big losses.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong, I love all the big wins that I've had. Right. They're great. The awards I won are awesome, right? I got a trophy case. I'll show you a bunch of them. Those are awesome. But to me, the valiant losses are what really, I think, help make me become the man that I am.
I agree with you. And that's why sports in general, athletics in general, is a great example of life, right? I mean, that's not just winning and losing. It's not necessarily, I think, forcing everybody to be included. It's allowing everybody the chance, the opportunity to be included, right? And then creating scenarios and an environment which they learn what decisions they need to make to take advantage of the opportunity to be included and participate. And then there's history is absolutely littered with the concept that you just brought up, which is really the greatest successes in life generally come from a set of failures. Right? And you just gave a great example of that.
I think running from losing and running away from the pain of a loss if we continue on this path, will be the biggest downfall of humanity, particularly amongst men.
Right.
And I think, I blame other men for this, allowing this to happen.
Yeah.
There's this like attack on masculinity that people talk about. And I don't disagree that there has been some like harsh critiques of masculinity.
Right.
And some of them are very valid.
Right.
Some of them are valid. But I would say what they really are is critiques on the immature masculine.
Right.
Not the mature masculine.
Right.
And there's not enough men standing up and taking, because masculinity, it's not easy.
Right.
It's not supposed to be easy.
Right.
Sometimes doing the right thing will be hard.
Right.
And so this is a time period where it is hard to actually be a man and stand up for what it is to be a man.
Right.
Right? But that is your job as a man. And throughout history, the elders, the guides, the magicians, right, of masculinity's role is to guide the immature masculine into adulthood. And we are finding less and less and less of that. And the last kind of bastion of that is athletics.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's slowly eroding. And so I challenge all the men out there who keep saying like, oh, I'm going to like leave the dating scene because it's too hard. I don't want to be like called this or that or accused of this, or always talking about, oh, I've got to be careful what I say. I say to you, sack up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that is like, that's immature. To me, you're being a coward.
Right.
Actually, you need to do the opposite of that. Like if your beliefs and actions as a man are true and moral and have value, they'll hold up.
Right.
And in the right context, people will hear and understand, and you'll be fine.
But especially if you're mature in that.
Yeah.
Right? Because the immaturity can span that whole concept.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And when we talk about men and masculinity and then appreciate women and femininity and really understand that men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Yeah.
And really, I think the secret sauce is in really celebrating both of those.
Hell yeah.
Right? And so being the masculine man, sometimes, I mean, most times, being strong in your masculinity is supporting femininity and women with just as much vigor and energy.
I agree.
Right? And it's all about how you do that, right? And with what level of maturity that you do that. So I agree with you 100%. I think it needs to be taken to a lot higher intellectual level, right? Than most people can actually appreciate.
I agree with that 100%. Yep. I think, and this isn't like it's not one versus the other.
Right.
And you see a lot of that right now. It's one versus the other. You cannot define masculinity without talking about femininity and vice versa.
Exactly.
Like when you look up the definition of masculinity, femininity is in the definition. Right. And same thing's true with femininity.
Right.
And it's a spectrum too.
Right.
Because like people see me from a distance and they assume and see very masculine traits.
Right.
And you're not wrong.
Right.
But also I have some very feminine traits as well.
Right.
And as I've gotten older, I don't run from them.
Right.
I'm not afraid of them.
Right.
In fact, I embrace them because I think it actually makes me stronger.
Right.
It makes me a more well-rounded, stronger man. And I think, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, I think as we start getting older, we stop the immaturity or the illusion of being tough. A tough man starts dissolving.
Right.
And it's like, yo, I'm not afraid of my emotions right now.
Well, that's where wisdom sets in.
Yeah.
That's where wisdom sets in. And we talked about this too, about even to the hormonal level, right? By and large, people think, oh, femininity, women, estrogen.
Right.
Masculinity, man, testosterone. Well, actually, men and women need both for the exact same reasons.
Right.
So it's there. It's already encoded in us. It's in our bodies, right? We are all both men and women in the simplest terms.
Yeah.
Hormonally. It's just that the proportion of the hormone balance dictates our, sex when we're born. And that's the balance for us.
Yeah.
Either more testosterone than estrogen or more estrogen than testosterone. But both are there. And we need them in those ratios to be balanced. And that's kind of the physiological corollary to what you're talking about in life.
Right.
So it goes down to the cellular level. It's, I was listening to the astrophysicist, I can't remember his name now. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yes.
Okay.
And he made a really awesome point. He said the four most common elements in our body or atoms in our body: hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen. That's what we're made of. And then he goes, what do you think the most common elements are in space, in the universe? Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. So yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. It's all within us.
Yeah.
Right? It takes wisdom, patience, understanding, maturity to express it in ways that are productive and positive for all of us, because we're all that energy. And I talk about that with my clients. It's all about energy. It's a conservation of energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's only it's conserved, number one, but number two, it's transferred. So we're all energy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And we're actually all going the same direction, right? Everything is we're all moving towards something, right? Whether it's towards something good, towards something bad, whether the forward movement is us running away or running to, right? The positive part is running to, but the whole universe is moving forward. Time.
Yes.
Going forward.
Never stops.
Never stops. So
Always expanding.
it's unidirectional. And I think the better that we understand all of that we just talked about, we could solve the world's problems. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's profound. That's profound stuff,
Very profound. Sometimes you look at it and it's like, it's so simple. Yet
Yeah.
it seems so challenging at the same time.
Right.
Right? Some of that is like conditioning.
Right. And that's the word we use to fix it. Because you asked earlier, so how do we fix this problem? A lot of it is the stuff we just talked about, right? But how do you get it from where it is now to a better system? Well, it's complicated, and it's going to take a lot of time, energy, effort, investment, money, and some would argue it's just not possible that there's no way to rein it in because of the power of the conditioning that's happened. But I like to think that a small part is lifestyle medicine, right? Is a way to get people to really understand that they're empowered for their own health, wellness, and longevity. That, maybe they can come off that blood pressure medicine by, losing a few pounds, right? And starting to eat the right foods. And maybe decondition them a little bit from feeling like they have to, they are a normal human emotion, therefore they have to treat that normal human emotion with the drug. To not really incentivize it so much. Because the drug companies are a business. Insurance, it's a business, right? A lot of people argue that business has no role in our health, wellness, and longevity.
Right.
So it's very complicated.
Yeah, that's one of those things where the people who are anti-capitalists, that's where their points actually, they have valid points.
Yep.
When profit is like the brass ring that everyone's reaching for, morality, especially in things such as health,
right?
The only thing you care about is profit, and so therefore the morality, right? Like what's doing the right thing can be sidestepped or avoided, or you could find all these ways to rationalize doing something else for profit rather than like the collective good.
Exactly. Years ago, we already talked about my story. When I was a protein chemist, right, at Arizona State University, I worked in a lab where they had with these little snippets of RNA. We all kind of know RNA from from the COVID vaccine,
yeah.
right? Well, that was called mRNA, right? There's more RNA out there. It's called microRNA.
Oh, damn.
MicroRNA has the ability, properly engineered microRNA has the ability to turn genes of expression on and off. And you package this little microRNA in the right particle, like a outer shell of a virus, which is can get around the body very easily, undetected for a time. And you package this microRNA and you design it or engineer it so that it's attracted to the very switch that it either turns on or off. That was out there. That was being worked on. In fact, they had cured lab rats of Parkinson's disease. I'm sorry, Huntington's disease.
What is Huntington's disease?
It's another disease, kind of like Parkinson's, that is what we call a neurodegenerative disease.
Okay.
That causes your nervous system and muscle system, which it feeds, to break down prematurely, and it takes your life. So they not only cured these lab rats of Huntington's disease with the microRNA, they stopped the disease in its tracks. So in other words, when those lab rats previously affected by Huntington's, now cured after the microRNA, had babies, the babies no longer had the Huntington's disease gene. So it took this disease, and not only cured it, but it prevented passing it to the progeny.
Are we going to live in a world where we're going to be able to just turn off diseases?
I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Because they don't want to turn them off.
Exactly.
But they'll want to sell the cure. They'll want to sell the ability to turn on or off.
I don't know. Why hasn't that come out yet?
Because they haven't figured out a way to make the money off of it.
That's probably it.
Right. Like maybe it's out there and there's one flat, right now they're thinking one flat fee. But what if they figure out, hey, if you want your child to be born like a designer baby, right? You want it to have blue eyes,
right?
Caramel skin. You want it to be
we can do that now.
6, 7,
yeah,
right?
We
Yeah,
can do that now.
Like CRISPR.
Technology's there,
right? And you do all these things. It's like, oh, okay, it's going to be $2.5 million. I'm like, well, I can't afford that. And it's like, well, I'm glad that you said that. Well, I'm glad that you said
for the rest of your life.
Right. What we can do, we can actually put you on a payment program. And so maybe with what could you put down that would be a comfortable down payment? Can you say $50,000? $50,000,
right.
Okay. Well, if you put $75,000
right.
down, we could drop your monthly payment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's that interest rate? Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean don't? Well, it's it's like 25% interest rate. Right.
See, and that's pretty much what we're talking about. They haven't been able to monetize it yet, and the treatment of Huntington's disease right now is probably worth tens of billions of dollars more than stopping it in its tracks. So I don't say that we should feel like, even though we are victims of the system, like I said before, I don't think we should actually play the victim.
Right.
I think we should
never play the victim.
Right. I think we should understand and appreciate kind of the position we've been encouraged to occupy.
Yeah.
But then also take measures to get out of that. Right. And to establish our new lane where we say, hey, wait a minute. I have the power within me to live the kind of life that I know is best for me. If I want to live a long time on this earth and be of value, right, and have my life mean something more than just me kind of moving forward like a robot,
right,
then I'm
consume,
right.
make more money.
Exactly. Then I'm going to do these things. Right.
Roll this loan over.
Yeah. Exactly.
What would you say? So what would you say are the best things to start implementing to increase the lifespan, the physical lifespan, and then also your longevity or the fulfillment of your life, which probably all tie together. But as a doctor,
yes.
right, who specializes in this,
yeah,
what would be like your core tenets to that? I know you have the 6 pillars.
Yes.
But within those 6 pillars, what would be the things that are going to give people most bang for their bucks?
I think it's probably the last 3: sleep, stress, and relationships. And I think really the last 2 are probably the most underrated, therefore carry the biggest bang for the buck.
Reducing stress, improving relationships.
Exactly. So I would say steps people can take tomorrow. Part of it is, again, we run up against this conditioning. And we talked about how masculinity, femininity run together, and both sexes actually have both.
Yeah.
And they should appreciate that. They should celebrate that, right? And so I talk to a lot of guy clients, and when I talk to them about yoga and meditation, they're like, that's for girls. I don't do that. That's for girls. Well, no, it's not.
Yeah. You'll get your ass smoked in a hot yoga class.
Exactly, right. So first we got to get past that, right? So get over the fact that you feel uncomfortable in your own head because of preconceived notions or whatever you've been conditioned to do or think. And get yourself in a quiet place, a comfortable body position, close your eyes, and just sit there or lay there. And then breathe in and out through the nose, not through the mouth. And you count your breaths. In is 1. Out is 2. In is 3. Out is 4. And you do that, you get to 20. And then you take a small break. And then I tell people to get in touch with one of their senses. Most times it's a skin. What do you feel?
Yeah.
Do you feel your toes tingling? I think about that. I can feel them right now. Fingers. I can feel like a certain area on my back if I think about it. So get in touch with the senses and then do another set of 20, right? And then on the next break, get in touch with another sense. And pretty soon your mind is so finely tuned and focused on your breathing and your senses that you just by default have minimized distracting thoughts. Oh, I got that report due tomorrow. Oh, shit, yeah, I forgot about the dog food. Oh, I got to go get that later. Oh, yeah, and I got to pick the kids up and drop them off tomorrow. And Joey's got a party tomorrow. And, oh, that other work assignment is really bothering me. And oh, I forgot to call John back. Dang it, I got to call John back, right?
Yeah.
All that stuff, it just plays in our head. So we have to be able to develop a calm and quiet mind to where it's shielded, and we develop skills in doing this so that we can do it at the drop of a hat. That we can do it maybe when we're relaxed to become more relaxed, or when we're stressed and we know we're stressed, and the stress is in the prefrontal cortex, it's the conscious mind, right? Where it normally operates in the subconscious mind. That's where it all starts. It starts in the primitive brain, goes up and down our spinal cord. We might not ever even realize that we're stressed, right? So becoming mindful and practicing meditation, I think is probably the one of the biggest bangs for the buck in that process. Being able to do that on command and have a quiet mind, a calm mind, is control of your own mind control.
Yeah.
And here's how I put it. Think about it. Our entire existence while we're alive happens where? Between our ears. So if we can control our own mind, it stands to reason we can control our entire existence.
Yeah.
Whatever it is we want to do or think or act, we can control it. So I think meditation and mindfulness is probably one of the biggest bangs for the buck. And a listener or a viewer right now, this minute, can actually do it right now.
Right.
Yep. I mean, I could even, guide us through a meditation, and somebody could start. That's something that somebody could legitimately start right now. They can get themselves to a quiet place, a comfortable body position, turn off the mind and just count on the breathing. And then the point about distracting thoughts, because they'll come in your mind, they will. I don't want people to punish themselves for a distracting thought.
Right.
I want you to do the opposite. And here carries through the theme of our entire conversation today is running away or running towards something, acknowledging an emotion or acknowledging something for what it is, forgiving yourself for everything that led up to that, which frees your mind, body, and spirit to move forward in that positive direction toward something. And so with a distracting thought, I don't want you to punish yourself for a distracting thought like, dang it, Doc Mason told me I have to minimize distracting thoughts, and here I am thinking of what I'm going to make for dinner tonight and the other stuff and the work. And I don't want you to think that. I want you to go, oh yeah, I think we're going to make spaghetti tonight. Awesome. Acknowledge the thought. So then you then give yourself permission to say goodbye. You say hello so that you can say goodbye. So that person that you know, walking on the other side of the street that you like kind of know but kind of don't, and you think, oh man, if I just ignore them, it'll be fine and I can just hurry up, get to my destination, right? But they're like, they won't let you ignore them. They're like, hey, Dan, hey, Dan the man, hey, Dan, what? And they start chasing after you. You're like walking faster, going head down, going, right? That whole thing would not play out if you'd say, hey man, how you doing? I got to run really quick, but it's so good to see you. You said hello so that you can say goodbye. And it's the same thing with a distracting thought. A distracting thought pops in your head. You say, oh, okay. Hi there. Now you can go. And pass like a cloud in the sky. That's how I want you to treat a distracting thought. And then go through this process. And the method I described here is literally for beginners. Like, this is for somebody who's, you know, like the person who's not comfortable in their own head. We're training you how to get comfortable in your own head.
Right.
There are advanced techniques, apps for your phone, your watch, coaches, podcasts, books, audiobooks, all kinds of stuff out there on how to become mindful, how to meditate. This is a real world practical solution to someone who has never done it before,
Right.
and might be totally uncomfortable. So that's kind of one of the biggest bangs for the buck, that someone could just tap into a whole new energy source starting tomorrow with
Requires nothing.
Yeah, requires nothing.
Requires nothing.
Yep.
Don't have to buy nothing. Don't have to be anywhere.
Right.
The lowest of low hanging fruits.
Exactly. But again, the highest yield. It's the sweetest fruit. The kind your Nana had stomped with her feet.
Right.
That's such a cool story. I love that. What childhood that must have been. Really cool. And then the other bang for the buck is, of course, relationships. You know, and we can talk about that if you want.
Yeah. No. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So relationships, we take relationships for granted in so many ways. And it's just kind of like life passing us by. And the corollary there is we're just walking by an energy source. It's kind of like it's free for the taking, and it's unlimited. There's no limit, right, to the energy that's available. And we talked about how conservation of energy and how it's not created or destroyed, but just transferred and transformed. And recognizing that and using that energy kind of selfishly, the nice reason it's unlimited is when you use it selfishly, other people benefit. It's really cool. It's probably the only thing in the universe that can be that way.
Wait, say that again. When you use it selfishly,
Other people benefit.
Okay.
That's really cool. Really powerful stuff. So with regard to relationships, humans and a lot of other animals and organisms in the universe, but particularly humans, are social creatures, right? Our mind, body, and spirit thrive off of that energy that's created, or not created, but that's transferred with healthy, positive relationships and strong social connections. But too many times, like in that example I gave earlier, we're busy. We got somewhere to go. We got something to do. We pass by that opportunity to, even in an instant, create a positive connection. I'm guilty of it too. I'm tired. I'm worn out. I spent the whole day. I'm on the road. I'm traveling. I get in that elevator, on the first floor of a 10-story hotel. I got to go to the 9th floor. And this family gets in. I'm like, hey, and they hit 3. I'm like, shit. And then someone else gets in, and they hit 5. And then some other guy's like, oh, shit, I forgot I got to go to the 7th floor, 7. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, shit, I just want to get to my damn room.
Right.
Now I got 3 more elevator stops. How petty is that? And I miss an
How
opportunity.
dare you want to use this public elevator?
Exactly.
You son of a bitch.
I'm telling you. So I miss opportunities too. I mean, nobody's perfect, but the best we can do is to realize that even in an instant, we can create a really powerful, positive, and strong social connection. And that can be in relationship. And that can be anything from a momentary pass by of a stranger all the way through all relationships, all types, all the way through to people you love and care about deeply, right? And understanding what it is about us that can somehow energize that encounter with positivity, so that becomes our aura, that becomes the aura that people talk about, that influence that you have. People have this saying, oh yeah, when so-and-so walks in, they just light up a room.
Yeah.
Well, they know it. They get it. And maybe they don't even get it, but they get it.
Right.
And those are the people we should strive to be, because it's all within us to really understand that energy and to take advantage of that. And that's what I said before, is it's free, it's unlimited, and when we use it all for us, everybody else benefits. And the energy just explodes in a positive and strong way. So I try my best to not be the Doc Mason who's tired and just wants to get to bed and, get your posture right, look them in the eye, smile and a nod, right? Pushing buttons for them, stuff like that. All that is just, it'll actually make me sleep better. And I got to realize that, most times I try and pay strong attention. But it's funny because with me, I'm on a lot when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with patients in ERs. I'm on, and I am that guy, right? But when I'm done with that, I sometimes want to just be in my own head,
Yeah.
But I'm missing out. When I'm in that mood, I miss out on that relationship piece.
Is there I guess a drawback to like needing to turn off, I guess, or go inward if you're always on? Like, is there a benefit to that, or is that like you're saying like, yo, you could always be on?
I think there is a benefit to it.
Okay.
Right. But you should balance that benefit against even a momentary opportunity to exploit some of that energy. Mm-hmm. Right. Because you need that for fuel, for any sort of self-improvement process. So I think you can have both. And then really, because your point is true, there's this whole thing about extroversion, introversion, and most of us have it wrong. That it's that how we think of an introvert or extrovert is not the right way. It's not the accurate way. Here's the explanation. An extrovert gets their energy from outside. Therefore, they direct their energy outside. An introvert gets their energy from exactly what you said, introspection, from within. So therefore, they direct their energy in, right? That's when they're at their harmony. Now, it doesn't mean that an introvert can't operate like an extrovert. It just takes more energy. It leaves them feeling drained, and incentivizes them to, as quick as they can, get back inside themselves. And that's kind of what explains my example, right? Because I'm just shy. An introvert extrovert exist on a continuum. Pure introvert is on this end, pure extrovert is at this end. Almost everybody is somewhere along that line, right? And so I'm just this side of the introvert side.
Okay.
So I go all the way over here, right? When I'm at work and when I'm with clients and when something has to be done, I need to be influential. That's where I'm at. But the more time I spend over there, the more energy I expend. And the more my tendency is to go back to a place of introspection, right? Where I can refuel. And the energy it takes to maintain that continuum comes from the universe. So I can recharge my batteries quicker if I actually take advantage of relationships and put the work in and the energy in to make them positive. Then when I spend time on the inside, I can actually recharge better and faster and then be able to perform over here when I need to. Gotcha. So that's kind of the essence of the relationships. So having both is important, but also recharging is important. For someone who's any component of introvert, we just have to understand of ourselves and others, right? And appreciate that that's where we get our energy. Therefore, that's where we direct our energy. So it's really important to recharge that way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because sometimes I'm like, am I extroverted? I don't know. I do a lot of extroverted stuff, but I'm like, I don't know if I am extroverted.
I think you're probably like me. My assessment of you, knowing what I know, Dan, is that I'm guessing you're just this side of the extroversion line. On that continuum, introversion here, extroversion here, this being the middle, somebody who's 50-50, you're probably 60-40.
Okay.
That's my guess.
That makes sense because there are times where I'm like, I need people to leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I need quiet. I need alone. I need to go within. I need to rewind all of these experiences I've just had and like be able to process them and interpret them in silence.
Exactly.
No phones, no music, nothing. I just need no stimulus right now.
Exactly. Yep. And so that's probably where you're getting your energy from.
But then there's times where if I go too long without people or being around people, then I also get where like a battery that just like sits on, it's like in the charging port too long.
Right.
And it's like, I got to get out. I've got to give this to people.
Right. Exactly.
So that's why sometimes I'm confused.
That's a perfect example.
Sometimes that's why I'm like, am I introverted or extroverted? I'm not quite sure. I'm like, but that makes sense that I'm like somewhere in that middle line.
Yeah. My assessment is that that's where you're at. And it's, I mean, anywhere on that line is a good place to be, but to your point about, in a way, my example, let's say you realize your fuel tank is low, your battery's running low, and you got to spend some time with yourself to recharge as an introvert, right? Direct your energy inward, get your energy from inward, and then later go out to the extrovert side. And how would you balance making a positive connection or relationship with that? Because you got to speak.
Right.
You got to engage somebody else. Well, two things. Number one, it's not always humans that can talk back to you that help you with this energy thing, right? It's not always humans.
Plants.
Yeah. Dogs.
I love dogs.
Animals. Right?
I love dogs.
Yeah.
I fucking love dogs.
So it's other beings, creatures, and organisms on the planet. Plants and cacti are organisms too.
Right.
Right? The earth, yeah, see? I mean, you can get energy from that.
Yeah.
You put energy in, it will give you energy back 10 times over. You water it. I mean, that's why, people talk to their plants and shit. Some might be like, what are you, off your rocker? What? Plant can't hear you. No.
It can, though.
It can, right? It's a living, breathing organism.
Right.
So you don't always have to get your energy from people. So that's one thing. The other thing, if it happens to be people, right? How you engage that person can minimize the interaction time, but maximize the energy flow. Right? So like if I'm walking down the street and there's a like a city worker there emptying one of the city garbage cans on the sidewalk. If I want to be in my own headspace and I'm recharging and I'm walking down the street, I got two choices. I can walk down the street and completely ignore that dude. I mean, I will literally never see him again in my entire life.
Right.
Ever. It's a chance encounter, one time only, for a whole lifetime, for either one of us. So I could either choose to do that and go, it's nothing. Or I could choose to get some energy in my tank by simply walking by him and looking at him in the eye and say, hey man, thanks for keeping our city clean. And just keep on walking. That took 2 seconds out of my introverted time. For 2 seconds, I had to jump over that line, but then right back.
Right.
Jump over the line, get a whole bunch of energy, and then right back.
Some of like very, more profound or experience or to what you're saying is like energizing experiences I've had are from complete strangers.
Yeah.
Talking to complete strangers.
Yep.
I know a lot of people will be like, sometimes if we're out places, like I'd be traveling, and a lot of times I'll just start conversations with random people around me.
Right.
I always thought it was weird if you didn't, like you're sharing the space together. So it's like, why would you not talk? If somebody sees you, you see them. Like it's almost weirder to not engage, even if it's a simple like, hello.
Right.
How are you?
And
right?
that's a good mentality to have. That's a good philosophy to have.
I got that from my grandfather on my dad's side of the family. He'll talk to fucking anybody. Literally anybody. I remember my nana was much more introverted, where my papa was like much more extrovert. I mean, he has like a ham radio, and he like talks on a ham radio to people on the other side of the planet.
Right.
He'll like,
That's
I mean, he
awesome.
literally has a tool to just talk to anybody who will listen to him.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. If you would have, if you would take the time to learn like modern technology, he could talk to anybody, right?
Exactly.
Even more people. But he loves ham radio.
Yeah.
And so he just, he taught, and I think I got that from him.
Right.
I'll go out and some of it is just, I don't know, maybe it's my energy that people feel. Also, I've been a giant human being for a good bit of my life.
Right.
So that like draws attention, and people want to like comment on that, or like people will say stuff to me. So I'm just take the opportunity to have a conversation with them.
Absolutely. And that's acknowledging that is 99% of the battle in the relationship pillar in that piece. So I think between those two relationships and mindfulness, stress, that's probably those two things are the highest yield, but least amount of actual effort. Perceived effort is something altogether different. It's a high level of perceived effort, but actual effort is really hardly anything on both those pillars. So that's what I think listeners and viewers probably could get most of the bang for the buck, and it could be something that happens right away.
Explain the difference between perceived effort and actual effort.
Right.
Because I think that's a term that gets thrown around in the scientific community of exercise science. But it obviously echoes outside, even beyond exercise science.
Exactly.
And I'm not quite sure people fully have an understanding of that.
Right. And I would love to get your idea of it too. I think one great example is, especially if it comes to like strength, right?
Yeah.
Is we've all heard and read about these stories and news reports of under certain circumstances, superhuman strength.
Yeah.
Like car rolls over a kid and some guy just goes to the bumper and just, and he lifts that car up off the ground. Kid gets out underneath it. But in a different situation, without a kid under it, you ask the same guy to go out and lift that car up. He wouldn't even come close.
Right.
So that's a perceived effort versus actual effort, right? The perception of the amount of effort and work and energy that it would take for me to go out and lift that car supersedes my brain power, my ability to wrap my mind around the actual effort it would take to do that. But when it's an emergency and a crisis, and I care about what's going on, I don't have time, nor do I have the wherewithal or intention to perceive my effort first. Because the perception always comes before the effort in everyday circumstances. But that example I just gave is proof that that's the very thing that limits us, is that perception. So perceived effort can kind of take the wind out of our sails.
Yeah.
Right? But it also has power to work for us. Right? So if we minimize the perceived effort,
Oh, that's not that much.
yeah, all of a sudden the actual effort is easier. Right? And we remove the limiting factor. So there's other times when something's pretty easy, actually, but the perception is so high that it does the reverse of the example I gave you with the guy lifting the car off the kid. It does the reverse. It's the opposite. Something that's actually easy seems and becomes, because we perceive it, insurmountable. And it's the example with meditation.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I can't do that. It's too hard. It's just awkward. It feels weird. So then all of a sudden it's impossible for us to do it. Impossible. Can't do it. So that's my take on the perceived versus actual effort.
Yeah.
How does that compare with
Yeah.
your take on it?
I think a lot of people, it's like, think about procrastination.
Right.
Procrastination is, there's a few things that are wrapped up in procrastination, but one of them is the perceived effort it may take to do this thing.
Right.
So you keep putting it off.
Right.
And then think of how many times you put something off and you put it off so long it shoots you in the foot, and then finally you have to do it because an anthill turned into a mountain.
Yeah.
And then you do it.
As they always do.
Right, as they always do. And then you do it and you're like, why the hell did I just not do this when I was supposed to do this?
Right.
Right? And it's like, this was a lot less effortless than I thought it was going to be. And the perceived effort of it was like, it was making me feel like I had 100,000 pounds laying on top of me and like I couldn't do it. Perceived effort, one of the things that I do for training, right? So this is in the world of training. When I start training new clients, once I establish like a baseline for them of technique and form, and they have the ability to like brace and control their breathing, we get the baseline down of all the shit they need. I will teach them now it's the time to start learning how to push beyond your limits.
Right. Which are self-imposed.
And some of it is a biological mechanism.
Right.
Because the brain will tell the body to start giving up at 40%.
Right.
Right? Just survive. That's how the brain works. It's like, hey, we want the path of least resistance.
Right.
Our job as humans, since we're conscious, is to push past our animalistic nature.
Right.
Push past our wiring as animals, right? As Homo sapiens.
Right.
I have a bunch of different things that I do, but the one that I do early is I put people on a leg extension machine, because you cannot get hurt on a leg extension machine.
Right.
There's no balance, there's no coordination. You're literally sitting in one joint moves the whole time.
Right.
So I'll do it at the end of a leg day, and I'll tell somebody, I'll be like, hey, we've got 2 sets of this. We got to do 2 sets of 15. They do the first set, they kind of figure out where they're at. And I'm like, okay, I need your second set of 15. This is it. We're done after this. So, but I need the second set of 15 to be it. Like, you could do 15, but you couldn't do 16.
Right.
That's what you have to think about in your head.
Right.
Okay, cool. Have them throw the weight on. They get to 15. I go, do one more. They do one more. I go, do one more. They do one more. Then I go, do 5 more. They do 5 more. And I go, do 5 more when they get there.
It's fucking awesome.
And a lot of times they end up getting to like 25, 30, 35 reps.
Right.
And then after they're done,
like,
then they're smoked, right? And I was like, look, I asked you to do 50, your max 15.
Right.
And you thought this was your max 15. And in fact, you were going to quit. You were going to be done at 15.
Right.
And I just got another 10, 15, 20 reps out of you.
Right.
Imagine what you were leaving on the table.
Right.
Right? Imagine that limiting that perceptive thought of what you could do was wrong.
Right.
It was a lie.
Right.
This is what you're actually capable of.
Right.
And so this is our baseline from here on out.
Yep.
And it like changes everything for people.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
teaching them to get, because like part of what I do after we get past a certain place is my job is to take you out to the limits of your, like to the limits of your ability.
Right.
Right. Or the perceived limits of your ability a lot of times.
Right.
And so we get to the edge. And a lot of trainers, what they'll do is just to like, for ego purposes, need to be like, oh, that guy, like it's hard.
Right.
Like that guy killed me. There's a time and a place to kill people.
Right.
But I need you to get to first, I have to get you sound and competent first in abilities and skills, because strength and training is skills, right? So I have to get you to a place where you can be safe and take care of yourself. But once we get past that, now it's time to start playing the mind games, right? And really start pushing ourselves and developing that grit and mental toughness.
Right.
So I'm going to take you to the edge of your limits and then bring you right back.
Right.
Not take you past.
Right.
Not max you out and not blow past.
Right.
Take you to just kiss it. I just want you to get the lips.
Yep.
Just quick. And then bring you right back.
Yeah.
And then when we come back, I take you back there again.
Right.
And then I bring you right back.
Right.
And what you'll notice after time is each time we go out to your limit, we have to travel further and further.
Right.
And 8 months, 12 months kicks in, and next thing you know, you look back and you're a completely different person.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the magic.
And so that's how I use the perceived limits to break through to where your actual limits are.
Right. Because a lot of times, and that example is another perfect one, perceived effort will define the actual effort.
Right. And then you operate off that and you wonder why you never have success. You never transform. You never turn into what it is that you're wanting to turn into.
Right. Because, think about it. In that example of the superhuman strength, we call it superhuman strength. It's still human strength.
Right.
And the guy lifted the car off the kid because he actually knew he had to.
Yeah.
So he had no perceived effort.
There was no way out.
Right. And so, don't you think then we could all lift a car up by the bumper?
Yes.
In theory.
We all have the ability to.
Right.
We all have the ability to do superhuman shit.
Right.
If you look for a way out, you'll find it.
Right.
But when there's no way out, you'll find a way.
Exactly.
You'll find the way through.
Yep. I like that.
And that is part of being put in adversity.
Right.
That's part of like life, getting put in these situations.
Like what we were talking about earlier. the cycles of life, suffering, right? Pain, joy, elation, anxiety, insomnia, right? All these things are part of the human experience.
Yes.
And so what I think you just said, the point I think you just made, correct me if I'm wrong, is that's the shit that builds the strength to allow us to minimize or maximize, depending on the goal, perceived effort. Because if we believe there's a low amount of effort that's going to go into something, then it takes little effort. Or if we don't believe there's effort, then we can do amazing things if we don't put that limit on ourselves.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Wow. That is so cool.
That is exact, because think about it. I just think for personal experiences, the things that I thought were really hard from a training perspective, now I look at them and I'm like, they're not hard.
Right.
They're not as hard as I once thought they were. And then, there is some too I've built and honed and I'm stronger now than I was then.
Right.
But I think early on in my training career and early on as an athlete, there was days where I killed a workout, right? I came in and I lifted this crazy weight for a crazy amount of reps, or it was a conditioning test and I smoked the conditioning test. Easy. It was a breeze. Right. And then, maybe a week or two later, I was like, man, we got 110s coming up today. I don't want to run these things. And it's the same amount of distance. It's the same run, same time that I have to do all of it. And I don't do as well, or I don't even make my times on a run that I just breezed past. Right. And the only thing was different was my mind.
Exactly.
Nothing else was different.
Right.
And so then it was like learning how to regulate my emotions over time was one of the big keys to perceived effort. Right. It was like, hey, I've done the hard things enough that it was like I'm able to actually correctly diagnose the effort level that is needed. Yeah. And then tap into the mindset that is like, hey, this is going to take a lot of effort. Let's get ourselves there. I am going to intentionally focus with all of my effort on this thing, and I'm going to fucking do this thing. Right. That's really hard.
Exactly.
Right. And then it may be hard, but it's not as hard as I could make it if I was like, man, I don't want to do this.
Exactly.
This is going to be too hard.
It easier. Yes.
Right. You could make it easier by being like, yo, this thing's going to be so hard. Like, I got to give it everything I have, and you do it, and then it's a breeze.
Right. And that's how perceived effort can be convertible.
Right.
It can either work against you or for you.
Right. And I think that's where when you start doing hard things consistently, you start learning how to tap into running towards the hard effort things instead of running away from them.
Well, because you learn every time you exert actual effort under certain circumstances, and over time you learn. So if you keep doing hard fucking things,
good things happen.
Right. We have to realize that we're strong beings meant to do hard things.
Yeah.
Right. And again, the more hard things you do, you're conditioning your perceived effort to be lower and allow your actual effort to be more comfortable and more balanced.
Yeah. I tell my guys when we first start training, I always say, I'll be like, don't worry, it only gets easier from here. And then I stop and I go, well, it doesn't get easier. I was like, but you get stronger.
Right. Yeah.
You'll get stronger.
I love that one.
Because it doesn't get easier. And in fact, I'll make it harder.
Exactly.
but you get stronger.
Right.
Physically and mentally.
Right.
And that is, I think it's important to do hard things. Right. I always tell my guys, like, yo, we got to keep ourselves humble.
Right.
Especially us men. It's really easy to like get a conflated ego or to think life and the world is easier than it really is if you don't humble yourself enough.
Exactly.
Like, I know this from experience. It's really easy, at least like I have definitely become victim of my ego in becoming like arrogant or overconfident in life.
Right.
And particularly my own abilities.
Right.
Right. Or or my habits or the way I'm conducting myself. And then something happens, right? The world has a beautiful way of like always finding a way to humble
It'll
us,
correct, yeah.
right? And so then it's like, okay, let me just find things to keep myself humble all the time, right? Whether it's having certain people around me or doing certain things to remind me. And in that process, you become an extremely capable human being.
Exactly.
Because I think people think we're not
capable and versatile.
Capable and versatile. And to piggyback off your point about people forget how strong we actually are.
Right.
And it's like Wolff's Law, right? The body will adhere to any and all the body will adhere to any and all stressors placed upon it.
Right.
Right? So it's like your body will adapt to any situation. You just have to put yourself under those right stressors.
Exactly.
So it's like if you have this thought of this person you want to be, you have to first figure out what it is that it takes to be that person. And then you start putting yourself in those situations, thinking already as if you are that person.
In other words, be that person.
Right. You've got to be the person you want to be before you'll become.
Which is hard.
100% is hard.
So again, we're back to doing hard things.
Doing hard things.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing hard things is, I think, the answer to a lot, which people don't love to hear.
Right.
But, you know, the things we need to do aren't always things we love to hear.
Well, yeah, and I mean to the opposite point, the yin to the yang. In that case, obviously we've spent this whole time talking about in lots of different ways how we need to do hard things and how it's better to do hard things. But part of what makes that hard is the universal truth that all matter in the universe wants to occupy the lowest energy state possible at any given point in time. It's a universal truth. It's a second law of thermodynamics. And so overcoming that tendency to minimize energy expenditure really is what makes something hard. But then again, it helps us to everything else we want to accomplish. So that's really the connection.
I think this is a great place to end this conversation.
Yeah, it was great.
One of two reasons. One, I don't know if we can top that.
Yeah.
Two, we've got to make it to dinner.
That's right. That's right.
And we've got two
ribeyes.
We've got some ribeyes to get. We also have two beautiful women who might be angry if we're
late.
Yeah. They're having such a good time without us right now.
Oh yeah. Well, they're still not here yet. So.
All right, let's sign off here, but let's give people a little rundown where to find you. If they're interested in your practice and needing your guidance to improve their health from a physical, mental, spiritual standpoint, how to reach out to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's Old Mission Medicine. So the website is www.oldmissionlifestylemedicine.com. Find us there and reach out, ask questions. Happy to help.
Yeah. And for the record, we just got blood work done.
Yep.
We got my blood work done. We've reviewed it. We've gone through the whole process. And it was a great experience on my part.
Great. Good to hear it, Dan.
So I fully endorse Old Mission's medicine.
Awesome.
So, and I also I paid for it, right? Yeah. This was not an ad.
Right.
I paid for the service.
Absolutely.
So I actually paid my hard-earned money for the service. Just for a disclaimer.
Well, and I think I need to say too, Dan, that I was a client of yours, right? So I engaged you in a consultation to talk a lot about nutrition and exercise to try and accomplish my own goals. So thanks for that.
No problem, man. People helping people.
That's right.
All right. Hell yeah. Let's get out of here. We're signing off, ladies and gentlemen. We'll catch you later.
Time for dinner.
Peace.
Peace.
I got some haters talking, they've been getting root canals. They wanna go to war, I chew them up just like my fingernails.